Welcome back. It's you guys, Seth Guru Baxter with Maker's Bar, bringing you and hoping to enlighten you with the leaders that we bring to you. We are creating 1 million leaders today for tomorrow. Today is a special timing for me as far as scheduling the guests that we have today. In the 90s, there was a time where grassroots organizations were really on the ground doing the work of missionaries, pretty much. And one of those organizations I've had the pleasure of being in relationship with on several occasions with some of the work I was doing back in those days was this organization, the CEO person of this organization, I should say, Homeboy Industries. He's going to get into some of the insights of Homeboy Industries. You might be familiar with seeing tortilla chips. It's not just tortilla chips. It's a mission-driven nonprofit. There's a great deal of mission work that has gone behind there. And I'm extremely pleased that in the 90s, with the music that we had that was the best, we also had the best organizations. And one of those were this organization today, Homeboy Industries CEO, Tom Vozzo. Tom, thank you for speaking with us today at Maker's Bar. We are humbled and so appreciative of having you as our guest today.
Thank you, Seth. We look forward to our dialogue.
Absolutely. So, Tom, tell us a little bit about your origins. Where do you hail from and where were you born on your journey into your CEO status?
Yeah. Well, my journey to Homeboy is not one would expect, but my origin story, I grew up in New Jersey, northern New Jersey.
East Coast. Oh, yeah.
East Coast guy. And it's a little bit of New York type of guy as well. And,
oh, yeah.
So my brothers, two brothers and sisters, we grew up, essentially we're a first generation Italian-American family. My brothers and I would first to go to college in our network of cousins and all. And so my father was a supermarket manager and my mother was a sort of a substitute secretary. And, they looking back, it's easy to see now, but they taught us a great work ethic to care for others, to understand our own spirituality. And they were great parents and they loved us all they loved us all equally for sure. And we felt all their love, but also was sort of this aspect of giving back and doing well. And so I went to graduate school, came out of graduate school, got a master's in mathematics. And but what I liked about the mathematics was it was applied math, more applied to everyday life. And out of graduate school, I took a job up in the Boston area back in the 90s, late 80s and 90s, was a catalog company, right? And so, which was nowadays, younger people don't know what catalog companies are, but it's eBay before eBay, right?
Right.
But then as a young guy, it was a family-run business, and I came out of graduate school. Did about $50 million in sales. We grew it to $350 million of sales. It got bought by a big corporation. So I had all that experience of working for a family-run business, and then a big corporation bought an Aramark corporation, and then I got all this experience working for a Fortune 200 organization, and so I learned a whole different set of skills as to how to be a business executive, how to be a leader. Aramark bought companies and they wanted to invest in the management team, allow them to grow the business. And so they moved me to another business that they acquired, and I grew that business from $70 million to $300 million. And then they promoted me up to run an organization of a $2 billion set of businesses. So the theme there is I'm a business guy. I like business. And I've come to learn, well-run businesses are good for our society. They provide jobs and opportunity and structure. And for me, a well-run business is sort of three aspects: that it succeeds for its shareholders and owners, that it has products and services that people want to pay you money for. And thirdly, is you make it a great place to work for its employees so they can make their life dreams come true. And there's a lot of good businesses out there. And so I'm a committed capitalist. Even now in my Homeboy job, I still talk about capitalism as good for our society. And we'll talk about more how that fits in later. And so I grew up in corporate ranks, right? And so I became an executive officer of a $13 billion organization. We were a private company, public company, private company. So I did well financially. And so as much as though I'm a committed capitalist, right, I also see the flaws of capitalism in our society and how it sometimes leaves people behind. And so my not my origin story, but my seminal moment for me was back in 2008 when I was leading my businesses, which again almost $2 billion in sales, $2 billion in sales in my businesses, and about $150 million of profit. And I remember 2008, the Great Recession, economy shrunk by 10%. All businesses did a lot of things to get through that recession, and I thought we did a pretty good job. And I remember talking to the chairman of the corporation near the end of the year and saying, we're going to come in at $140 million of profit, not 150, missing it by 10 million, which I thought was pretty good considering the massive recession. And I remember him telling me, Tom, that's not good enough. That we made promises to the analysts on Wall Street, and we got to get back that next to $1 million. And so I'm a good business guy. I knew what it would take. And I knew that what it would take is I have to lay off a lot more people. And I would lay off people who've been with the company for 25, 30 years. They depend upon the company for their living. And I also know that when the economy turns around, we would need to rehire those people. And so to me, it was like a real sign of short-term thinking is going to affect long-term. And not just long-term performance of the company, but affects people's lives. And that something struck me at that moment that something's out of whack, that there should be a way of running businesses where we're not impacting people's lives just so we can have a high scorecard in the financial markets. It's not like the business was going out of business. We were running out of cash, and we were still doing well, right? So something hit me there. And then in my mind, I said, I got to do something different. But I had an important job. I had sort of golden handcuffs on. So a couple of years later, when those handcuffs uncuffed, I left. I left the corporate world behind, and then a friend of mine, all along the way, I was on the board of Salvation Army of Los Angeles, and a friend of mine asked me to come to lunch at the Homegirl Cafe, and he had heard I had left. I had retired, and I remember sitting in the Homegirl Cafe, and here we're in Los Angeles. Homeboy Industries helps gang members leave gang life behind. We employ them. They're in all our jobs and all our businesses. And I'm sitting at the cafe, and I'm having lunch, and I'm looking around at the workers. And look, for me, in my prior 8 years in my for-profit job, I had bought 40 companies and sold 5. So you get a sense for like what's the workforce you're sort of buying and buying into, and the values are. And I'm looking at the Homeboy workforce. I'm thinking, wow, they're interacting with the customer. They're taking direction from their supervisor. They're working hard. They're enjoying themselves. I mean, that's what you want out of a well-run business. And what challenged me right then was realizing I would have never hired any of them in my for-profit job because they had tattoos on their face. They had felonies, and they were gang members. And so my friend asked me to get involved. That whole environment was really interesting to me, that here I'm this hotshot business guy, but knew nothing about this part of the workforce. I didn't want to be on the board, and so I wanted to see if I can put my business skills to use. So I rolled up my sleeves and became a volunteer. And then a couple months later, our founder asked me to be the CEO. And so that was try to get to a quick version of the origin story of me getting to Homeboy.
No, that was fantastic, because I was going to ask you, so was it as a volunteer, you saw the business model, and the business model attracted you due to them hiring a different portion of our workforce? Or was it that you saw in hiring that different portion of our workforce, the model was working to turn over a profit?
It was definitely all that. And look, back to my personal philosophy, well-run businesses are good for our society, right? Because purposeful jobs, people can make their life dreams come true. And what I saw Homeboy that afternoon was, in the context of a job, they are dramatically helping people move their lives forward. People have been incarcerated. People have been in gangs and trying to get out of gangs. People have all these struggles. It's that job, the stability of a job, that helps people change your life and transform that life. And so that really intrigued me. And that's threw my lot in with them. But it was interestingly, a couple weeks, months into it, I realized it's more than a job. It's about helping people heal and finding their self-worth, which is even more important. But it was that first notion, like, oh my gosh, business is helping people I've never thought could be helped.
I find that so fascinating. I would imagine you would as well. It seems to me that a good business is about your employees being happy and having a streamlined workforce that has buy-in through their happiness in what they're doing. So was that something you were seeing as you were volunteering, or was it more so when you became the CEO? So it seems as if when you were volunteering, you could see the employees in their work situation, and that was saying, oh, okay, I see this business model. Or did you see it as a CEO and said, well, since I hadn't seen this workforce before, but I see the flow of this, what was that trigger moment for you, that turning point?
Yeah. That's a good question. Let me try to sort of answer it this way. I started as a volunteer, and first of all, let me explain. Homeboy Industries, we're a nonprofit organization. Our single mission is to help people leave gang life behind and life of crime behind. And we do that through healing. And we have a whole host of services. So when people leave the prison system, jail system, they have a lot of sort of societal hurdles that are in place. They have and all our folks are victims of complex trauma. They join a gang thinking that's their family, but it's not really the family. Do something wrong, they go to prison, they pay their time, they come out, and we want to keep them from going back into the gang. So they voluntarily come to Homeboy. So Homeboys is this mix of social enterprise businesses and social programs where we provide tattoo removal, education, substance abuse therapy, anger management, counseling, a whole host of things. So to the point of your question then, well, what I thought what's interesting is like the businesses are sort of like facilitate someone getting through our program, but the more important part of our program is helping people heal from their trauma, and they become resilient enough to take on what society keeps throwing at them, because they're among the most demonized and despised people out there. And there's goodness in everybody. So the fundamentally at Homeboy, we believe everybody has goodness in them. We need to give people chances. We need to give people chances. So to your question about the business and workers, what I saw was, hey, the business just allows all the rest of this stuff to happen, which is the more important part. And so early on, there's a lot to be said here, but jumping around, while people were doing the job at Homeboy, the bakery jobs and cafe jobs and all those jobs, that wasn't like the purpose of them being there. The purpose of them being there was for them to heal and to build positive relationships for the first time. And along the way, they're doing work, but that's sort of secondary to the bigger goal of helping them transform their life. And that's what was so intriguing to me, is how, like, all of a sudden learning about how people do transform their life and the challenges in that.
And that's going to bring me back to your book that you authored in 22, but I want to circle back to bring it current. Can you remind our audience the origins of Homeboy Industries itself, how it began, who founded it, and what its intention was in its founding?
Sure. Father Greg Boyle, Jesuit priest, founded Homeboy Industries back in the late 80s. So Father Greg, his first stop as a parish priest was at Dolores Mission, which is in East Los Angeles. It happens to be the poorest parish in the whole Archdiocese of Los Angeles. And it really was in the ground zero, the epicenter of gang violence. And while today people think there's gang violence out there, there's way more gang violence out there in the late 80s and early 90s. It was a real epidemic. And Father Greg would walk the streets of the neighborhood and just lose these young men to lose the gangs and the violence and lose their lives. And so he hit upon this very simple, obvious notion that if you get them enough money through a job so they can take care of the basics of food and shelter, they're not going to go running with the gang to make the money for the basics of food and shelter, because all these folks are survivors on the street. They don't have a family network. They don't have people helping them. So they're trying to survive, and they think the gang is the only way they're going to make it through. So he hit upon, hey, get them a job. And then that morphed to having our own businesses to get them a job. And so we were a jobs program and businesses. But about 20 years ago, it really shifted back to this point of they're all victims of complex trauma. They got jumped in the gang at young age by their uncle, aunt, mother, father. And so part of this is, while you can get them a job, if you can get them healed or have the healing process in place, the likelihood of them reoffending is pretty low, right? And so we've become this big organization that is all about healing and finding positive relationships. And so each day now, we have 500 people on payroll. They're and to be in our program, you have to have been incarcerated, be gang affiliated, and be drug clean. And so we pay people to work on themselves and heal themselves. In addition, another 500 people come in each week to take advantage of our services we provide: substance abuse counseling, anger management, domestic violence counseling, all those types of things. And so we're now, a $45 million organization. Unfortunately, we say we're the largest gang reentry program in the world because we're the largest one in LA, which has the largest gang population in the world still today. But it's effective, and we have people show up, and it's voluntary. And each week about 15 people interview to be part of our program, and we only take 2 because that's the way the numbers work. And we take what Father Gregos taught us was we take the person who needs us the most, the toughest of the tough cases, because we know if we're not helping that person, there's nowhere else in LA County that helps that person. And we don't take the easy cases; we take the hard cases, but the results are really, really impressive.
I'm very curious, even though it says Homeboy Industries, and this is somewhat of a simple question. I'm just curious for the audience. It's not just for male gang members. It is also inclusive of women who participate in gang activity or incarcerated women as well, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Our population is about 60-40 men to women. But, in gang world, it's about 95-5. But that being said, I say it this way in my words. Look, gang members, serious violent offenders are very much demonized in our society.
Why do you think that is, Tom? I'm curious. I think some people.
I show up a Homeboy, I'll say in my words, right? I showed up a Homeboy. I think I'm like representative of a lot of society. Like I'm thinking, gang members, that they chose that lifestyle, and yeah, they're doing violent crime. Let them. Who cares? Whatever happens to them, right? And so that's why they're demonized. And they want to be locked up, and people want to lock them up and throw them away, and they don't want to give them a chance. And what I have learned is that, oh my gosh, they almost, it was predetermined they're going to be in that lifestyle. Now the folks who are trying to get out of that's pretty extraordinary, and it's hard because it's almost like divorcing your family. Guys, as we help people, we say, don't go talk to your mother or father. They're still in the gang. Or your baby mama, she's still causing trouble. Stay away from her. Or when the woman says, "Hey," we say, "Stay away from that guy. He's abusing you." Like we were right in those people's lives and helping them make those choices. So, and it's hard. And so why back to this women? So women, though, while men are demonized, I think women are even a tough step down because they're being abused by the gang, by the guy, and so they're the sort of the groupies of the gang, and so. We have women's only programs. That's why we want to have a blend of 60-40 of men to women, and to help.
Now, you use some very interesting transformational language, healing, spirituality, and giving back. A good portion of what I'm hearing from you is your involvement with Homeboy Industries has a great deal to do with the spiritual vocation. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, it's sort of retrospectively, I can elaborate on that for sure. I show up a Homeboy. Again, I think I'm a hotshot business guy. I did well. I sort of hit all the peaks I wanted to ever hit in my professional world. But to much is given, much is give, right? I mean, help out thy neighbor. So I wanted to volunteer and help. But then you get involved in people's lives and you see how their struggles out there. And look, this is no great insight. I've read it from other people as well. Look, there are two Americas. The America for me and my network, and then there's America of the poor and the demonized. And there's huge gulf in between the two Americas, right? To be poor in our society is really hard, especially if you're trying to do it the right way. There's so many barriers and hurdles. And so I see the struggles of the poor. I see the struggles of our people, the demonized. And what's so interesting is our folks, yeah, and back on the spirituality question, I noticed that they had a much deeper spiritual sense than I, and much understanding of God than me. And I'm thinking, and I'm talking to some of our folks and some of our guys who they were in solitary confinement for a year. And I'm thinking I would come out and be angry at God, but they found God. They found the love of God. Mm-hmm. So, part of me was obviously I was a churchgoer, not deep in my spirituality, but like, my gosh, what are they feeling and understanding that I didn't know? So that kind of pushed me more on my spiritual path. So I didn't start at Homeboy thinking, oh, this is going to be a path for me, but it's been a glorious path for me to kind of just break bread and be with our folks and understand deep down, that God loves us no matter what, that God's not judging us. God's loving us. And to me, look, I'm a business guy. In the corporate world, I follow all the rules. All the HR rules they set out. You can't talk about God.
Yes.
God, right? But like, I would never talk about God in the workplace. But my own spirituality. Now, we're not a religious organization at Homeboy. We're definitely soaked in spirituality, because that's how people change their lives.
I think that's absolutely true, and I find it so fascinating that historically businesses and not necessarily delving too much into those waters, but just examining some of that, I find it interesting. In our country, our businesses started off with a strong foundation spiritually, and that was the foundation of the organizations, to do good for the community, to give glory to God in that sense. And it was wrapped in a spiritual foundation. And that we've come to this place where it can be somewhat taboo, but there seems to be a reconnectivity in organizations wanting to have a spiritual foundation in the organizations, and find that has been creating longevity. And it's also been really helpful in promoting the business growth. Would you say that even though Homeboy Industries is not a religious organization, but some of the spiritual foundation that you've had in your involvement has helped it to flourish?
Oh, no doubt. And I would put it in business speak terms. Right? You have committed employees. You have people who like to be around other people, right? People who find their self-worth in their job as well as their home life, right? People who, in a mission-driven organization, care about the other and step forward and do the other. And look, we have social enterprise businesses, and they're doing well, and but people see that's a means to an end. We bake bread to hire homies, not hire homies to bake bread. So we have a fundamental difference of understanding. Like, our mission is not to bake bread and deliver. Our mission is to create jobs for our people, good jobs. And by the way, we're going to bake good quality bread, and we're going to sell it. We're going to be aggressive in our selling and all those things. But it's a different perspective in what is our goals of our businesses. And that really, in my vision, and I've seen lots of workforces out there, that drives commitment and teamwork and dedication. But I'm willing to, back in the business speak, I'm willing to put the Homeboy workforce up against any other workforce. So let's have the same business model. You pick your employees, I'm going to pick mine. I bet you I'm going to win.
Now, within that, in the corporate structure in Homeboy Industries, so they come into the organization as an employee, so they get hired. There is a hierarchy or a track they can go into executive positions, administrative positions. There is a track that employees can follow as well, correct?
Yeah, one of the things I'm really proud about, pleased about, is now 2/3 of our management team are former clients and people with lived experience, and so we have a whole bunch of all sorts of diversity. However you want to define diversity, we have all sorts of diversity at Homeboy all throughout the ranks, not just from frontline navigators and case management supervisors, but the directors, VPs, and on my executive team, people with lived experience who were former clients. So that's I think is going to help ensure the organization thrives into the future, because they hold that. Everybody cares about the mission, but they hold that holds the culture strong. Is that it's about helping our workforce and our people. But I just want to sort of, you said something in your question is a little bit different. People come into our program, we pay them to work on themselves, and really, when they first come in, we send them to the classes, the therapist, to get the tattoos removed. So in any 40-hour week, only like 5 hours are they sweeping floors and washing windows. And after a couple months, when we rotate them through one of our dozen social enterprise businesses to just get them a couple days of work efforts. But most of the time they're working on themselves and knocking down the barriers that exist for them. And then after 18 months, people with us for 18 months, then we get them jobs, and mostly outside of Homeboy. Now, for our business growth, sometimes we keep them, for some of them, for ourselves, but it's about getting them back mainstream, back into the society and the businesses out there.
I think I myself, having had the experience being back in the 90s here in California, I had an understanding from our involvement in a nonprofit stance. But would you mind explaining some of the ethnic and racial dynamics of Homeboy? Because I think during my time, people's perception was it was just a Southern California organization for Hispanic people or Latinx people. And I'm understanding for a long time now, it is a racially and ethnically diverse organization from the grounds up. Would you be able to address some of that?
Yeah, for sure. So, and let me just say, if I for the listening audience, if I sort of inarticulately use wrong words in the wrong way, give me some grace and let it go.
We got you.
Talking about race, it gets dicey.
I know. And so my goal, I tell you, Tom, for Maker's Bar, and then even in my family, was very racially diverse. Right? My parents adopted a number of children, so we were white, black, Chinese, and so forth. So we had that. And in today's times, we know it's a sensitive subject, but the goal is to help educate people to that.
Totally. I've learned so much, for sure. Right. And so, listen, and really the demographic dynamics have changed in LA County in 30 years, right? I mean, the Latino population is sort of huge as a percentage than it once was. So we're about, we take, first of all, let me say it this way. There are over 200 different gangs in the county of Los Angeles. And so we're in a gang neutral area, so we pull people from all over the county. And there are still over 120,000 gang members in the county of Los Angeles. And for the most part, like 99% gangs are racially segregated, right? I mean, by the races that have their own gangs. And so, I say that as a context because if people join gangs and they generally line up with their race, they then, the ones we work with go do some type of crime. They go to prison. And what happens when you show up at prison? That is really segregated. Right? How that works. Everybody lines up with their race in the prison because they got to survive prison politics. And so then you got the probation system, correctional officers. And so what am I trying to say? People walk into Homeboy Industries tired of gang life, tired of being demonized by society, and they're just mad as heck for racial hatreds that has been put upon them. And I get that. So we go out of our way to work with gang members, not gangs. Like I said, we have 500 people on our payroll at any one time. We pull from over 120,000 gang members, 200 gangs. Back to our social enterprise, our bakery, Artisan Bread. I mean, there's nothing better than breaking down rival enemies of two guys when they stand at the bread table, shoulder to shoulder, rolling dough, and they know how much bread. Wow. They know how much bread they got to get out for that day. We learned, but Father Grace taught us, you don't demonize somebody. You don't demonize somebody you're in relationship with. And so we're about pushing relationships. So if we see, 4 or 5 Latino guys standing around and 4 or 5 black guys standing around, well, our team will go, whoa, you guys, you can't just stand in these groups. You got to kind of merge yourselves together again, right? And we do that the cohorts of gangs as well. So fundamentally, we're about breaking down those barriers and working with people and helping people heal. And so what's really good about our organization, we have a way of sort of putting water on the anger that comes as people walk through our doors, comes in the anger that they have.
You
And
said water, real quick, Tom.
Like philosophical water, like we cool.
No, I like that. No, I understood that. I just
Yeah,
want to. I really dug that expression. Water on the anger, as in to soften it, to bring in some warmth.
Yeah, right, and
I
help
like
see
that.
the anger. And so back to you asked a simple question. I gave you a long answer. It's about 70% Hispanic, 25% African American, and about 5% Asian, with a few white gang members thrown in there too along the way. And it's a balance. And we go out of our way to try to be very cognizant of all those issues, how it plays out. But we have great sort of diversity all throughout the management team, all the way on up.
So it reminds me of this story. I worked with the YMCA for many years, and one of the most surprising facts for me was that the YMCA in Jerusalem is a place where Muslims and Jews meet, and it's one of the few places that they all meet and no guns are allowed, and they're both okay with it.
Yep, good, great, right.
And Homeboy Industries reminds me similar of that place. They come there because they don't want any more of gang life, and they're tired of the racial politics that have been a part of it, and they just want to be a part of something. And that's one of the things I remember most. I remember this had to be about 2003, I think it was, and we had some cats. I was running my nightclub, Hip Hop Cafe, and we had some Hispanic brothers that came in and said, "You're going to need protection." And we were thinking, protection, but we didn't know their involvement was so deep. And part of what I found so interesting was they were saying racially, this was a neutral zone. We all meet here, and this is Homeboy area. And it was supposed to be the area of Sunset Boulevard where there was no racial disharmony. Everyone knew that was a safe space. And they found that was when they said about protection, it was mostly to say that we have racial politics here going, but you know that you're in a safe spot. And I don't know that a number of people understand those dynamics do play. The racial gangs do play well with each other when everyone's respectful of the terms. We're all trying to make something here. And Homeboy Industries was a founding portion of the piece that was in that area. And I just remember that back in that time. Now, if I may jump this gun a little bit, you wrote a book, 2022, The Homeboy Way. Tell us a little bit of insight about that. I'm familiar. I would like people to understand what is the Homeboy Way.
Yeah, sure. So I wrote the book. Listen, so for my first several wech, months of being a homeboy, my head was just like spinning and thinking, it's like there's so much unique at Homeboy. And the uniqueness is helping the individual and focusing on let's all our effort goes to help the individual, and without care what precedent that sets. Now I come out of corporate America, it's like, well, you got to treat people exactly equal, but a Homeboy, no. Like if you need money for your rent, we may give you money for your rent. And the guy comes in tomorrow, may need money from him. We may say no because we know something else in the story. So we're not worried about sort of doing things exactly the same. And so that's just one small example. So I learned so much about how to help people, right? And whether it's through social services or whether through businesses. But I'm thinking to myself, well, there's a lot of lessons, leadership lessons you can learn here. I've been learning of what are leadership lessons learning working with gang members that if I was ever to go back to corporate America, what I would bring back. And that's sort of after 4 or 5 years, I eventually thought, well, maybe I should write this down. And then, but the book became that plus, the journey of Homeboy through sort of, we've had tough times financially, and now we're a good spot. And what's that mean? How does society sort of embrace the community or don't embrace the community we're trying to serve? And then my own spiritual journey. And then really, how do you run a nonprofit organization? along the way. And to me, it's again, the whole time writing the book, I was trying to talk to the business community, folks who were like myself in the business community. And why do I say that? Because back to this concept of there are two Americas, the America the poor and
Yes,
America
please.
the right. But the other thing I was seeing is, listen, the poverty rate in America, people who are poor in America, has been the same for 45 years, same narrow band of 12%. And I look at Homeboy and I look at our results and I look at how we do the work we do. We're able to lift people out of poverty, really extreme poverty, and get them a job, and then so they can make it for themselves and their family. And so if Homeboy can lift people out of poverty just by giving them a job, social enterprise job, and getting them ready for the rest, what society takes on out there, I'm trying to challenge the business community. Hey, go hire the working poor and provide some support services around it. And just realize that people want to do a good job. This myth that, they don't care, they're lazy, they don't want to work hard. No. They want to do all those things. They just have so many challenges in their life. They're going to be evicted from their housing. Their parole officer calls them and demands them to come to court. These are other things that stop them from being the quote unquote perfect employee. But when they show up, they care, they want to do a good job, and they're loyal as you're loyal to them. And so I'm trying to sort of get the message out there. It's like, there's a different way of how to help people who are poor in our society, people who've been incarcerated in our society, and people who've been traumatized in our society, not by story, but for themselves. And that's the Homeboy way. How do you treat all that going forward?
And it's interesting in using the term homeboy because it has such a term of it is such a term of endearment in communities, and it actually means so. In growing up, that's my homeboy. That's like my brother. That's my brother. That's somebody I will die for. That's somebody I love this cat, and so I think the endearment is so in relationship with Homeboy Industries. And a term of endearment is saying we are working together because you're my brother, you're my sister, and I think that's a big part of the foundation. So I found the book very fascinating in teaching the Homeboy way, teaching how we can work together. It seems to be the point of the book, correct?
Exactly right, and not just work together, but also the sort of to shine a light on as we're employing the population I'm talking about. You need to give them a little bit more support and variances. Let me give you a story. We have time for a story or two.
Yes, we do. Please.
All right.
I told you. I got to tell you, this is one of the most important interviews to me, as I mentioned earlier in the recording of this. Homeboy Industries has been a part of my life in California so much in so many different levels, and the young people I worked with and the club that we ran. And so please indulge us with some of these stories because I know that they're going to inspire a number of our other CEOs who watch, and then some of the young people who saw Homeboy as a part of their rearing, as part of what we did. We'd love to hear it. Please, you definitely need time.
I appreciate that. Well, so we have a social enterprise, our bakery, right? It's artisan made bread. We deliver to restaurants all around the county of Los Angeles, but also we sell a farmer's market. And so I remember this 6 months into my time at Homeboy. I'm the new CEO. Father Greg asked me to be CEO because the organization was going through a financial crunch, and I'm trying to figure out how to help the organization move it forward and get stability. But it's also, how do you? But I want to know what makes the organization tick and successful. And so I'm walking around the bakery and just just observing, and one of our guys, George, one of our farmers market guys, is asking for the weekend off to the bakery manager. And so, the manager gives him the weekend off. And then I go up to George and, I'm just trying to make small talk. Hey, what are you doing? Where are you going? Now, the weekend in the farmers market world, that's the busiest time. And George was one of our best farmers market guys. He had a gift for gab. And by the way, it's a good business for our folks to be in because they don't interact often with the public that shows up at a farmer's market. And so for them to be able to go there, sell the bread, interact with the customer, it's a pretty good thing. And George was really good about it. So he always sold out all the bread, whatever market he showed up to. But he asked for the weekend off. And so I'm talking to George. I said, so, what are you doing? And he turns to me and says, well, I'm reporting in. And I said, what's that mean, reporting in? Well, he's reporting to county jail. He was reporting to county jail for the weekend because at that time in LA County, if you owed money, you can report yourself into county jail and burn off some of the money that you owed by being incarcerated for 4 days. And just another, I want to give another sidebar. It's the nuttiest thing for our society.
It really is.
Our guys come, the amount of money our folks owe coming out of prison. It's like, how does society think that while they're in prison, they're somehow going to earn money, or immediately after they're out of prison, they're going to get a job, which most can't, but then they're going to get a job that they can pay enough to pay back their debt. Now they have restitution charges, which is fine, but then they have parole officer costs, correctional officer costs, judge costs. They have all these legal fees. And George wanted to do it the right way. He didn't go to his homies and ask to borrow money because he's trying to get out of the gang. He didn't want to be indebted to them. He didn't go to a loan shark. He didn't go sell drugs on the street corner to make the money because it would have been a quick make to pay off some of that debt. He wanted to do it, quote unquote, the right way. So when he told me that, I like drove home that weekend thinking, wow, that guy's just trying to do it the right way. That's pretty amazing. And I was feeling all sorts of guilt. Maybe I should have reached into my pocket and given him some of the money. Why he's got to do all this? So I thought about it the whole weekend. Next week comes along, Tuesday, I make a beeline into the bakery. I'm trying to track down George. And I said, how'd it go? And I can see the stress on his face. And now George, interestingly, been out of prison for about 4 or 5 months. But what's interesting is it was unique. He ended up getting custody of his 2 children, a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old. And prior to going into the county jail, he had a caregiver. He was having a caregiver come to watch his 2 children while he went to county jail. And the caregiver couldn't come, and he still had to go to jail.
Oh, wow.
So he left his 10-year-old and 8-year-old alone in the apartment for 4 days. Now imagine that. You're a father, your mother, you're in jail. You can't call, you can't see. You're leaving your 10-year-old, 8-year-old. You don't know what's going on. Imagine the stress that causes along the way. I want to quickly say the kids are okay.
Thank goodness. Thank God. Yes.
Right. But the point of the story is, gosh, the challenges that the poor in our society, or the people who've been incarcerated in our society, are facing when they're trying to do things the right way, or something that we can't in the rest of society imagine. And it's like we have this tendency to judge or think, well, maybe you should have borrowed the money, maybe you shouldn't have done this or done that. So we got to stop ourselves from judging and just realize, these folks, they got challenges, barriers that I don't know about. And so it may show up, it's a minor point, it may show up in their work performance because they got other stuff going on. But boy, George is a pretty loyal employee, and he's going to be there when we need him along the way. Another quick story, we in all our positions, we try to put our clients, we call them trainees, into our jobs. So I've had a number of executive assistants as in my role at Homeboy, and one of them, she was great. She went to youth camp in LA, which means youth jail, in and out. Yep. She was a gang member, in and out, tough gang member, angry, all that stuff. Ended up being a mother at 17. While she was my assistant, her and her young daughter lived in a shelter. Right? Had no family support, lived in a shelter, but she showed up every day on work on time, did a good job. As a nonprofit, we have a board of directors. So we would have quarterly board meetings that would start at 7:30 in the morning. And she would get there at 6:45 to get the water on the table, the papers out, it all set up. Well, one day before one of our board meetings, she gets a call from her parole officer saying that she needed to report in at the office by 8 a.m. the next day. And my assistant tried to explain, well, I got this job. I have to be there early. I have to take care of things. And parole officer didn't care. Said, if you're not here by 8 o'clock next day, I'm going to violate your parole. It means you're back in the prison system. So obviously we're Homeboy. We let her take the day off, right?
Yes.
If she worked at another company, when another company let her take that day off at the last minute, maybe. Or how much shame could she have said to another company? Would she have been so filled with so much shame that she would never really say what the reason is and just call out and say I'm sick, and then sort of still get in a little bit of trouble with the company? I tell that story to say, please hire the people we work with, hire the working poor, but also recognize, oh, they got some life struggles, and if you give them a little bit of latitude, so they can kind of get through those challenges, because they're going to get through those challenges. They want to do it the right way. You'll have a great workforce, and you'll have loyal employees.
It reminds me, there's another good friend of mine, Ben Joya, who wrote a book called Influence with a Heart. And his goal was saying that in organizations, if the business model is definitely not to run the business with your heart, but to have your heart guide how it influences your business decisions.
Right.
And I think we'd
exactly right. How you sort of, what influences your decision on your people, how you treat your people and invest in your people, for sure.
So is this executive assistant still with the company?
Oh, well, a beautiful story. The answer is no. So while she was my assistant, she never finished high school. She went to community college, and then and she did pretty well there. And then she enrolled at UCLA, and then she graduated from UCLA. And now she's at Cal Berkeley Law School.
That is so incredible, man.
I mean, it's like she just has blossomed, and it's about the strength of the community. A lot of the women at Homeboy really bothered her and helped her out, and oh my gosh, it's such a perfect story. But like I saw her transform her life. I see at times she would be so angry, she would get a call from, she just wanted to do something bad. But no, come on, we're back together again. We're going to help you through this, and that's what it takes. That's how we all can help, right? That's how even I want to say it this way, that's how even a sort of a corporate CEO can actually help out, just by being there and saying, well, we got you. Let us help you think it through,
Another question going along those lines, seeing her success story, how many of the Homeboy graduates have gone on to open up their own businesses? As far as some informational advice or for some of our audience, have others gone on?
They have, not a lot, because I want to say, a lot of people ask me that question. Listen, we're right there at the, whatever cliches, front line, or when people come out of the prison system, they've been in prison half their adult life, in and out, right? Never really held a job. 90% of our people have never held a job anywhere else before for more than like 3 or 4 weeks. So we're helping people who are raw heal from their trauma, become more resilient, and get a little bit of job skills. So we're like that first job they ever have. And then we get them another job, which is really the first outside job. 4 or 5 years later, they become resilient enough maybe to have their own business. So they're guys who do solar panel work and they have trucking work, but for the most part they become workers with getting decent jobs. But what the generational impact is, their kids aren't now in gangs, and their kids now are taken care of, and so that's how that pays forward.
Well, a number of the ways I've seen in my years seeing Homeboy grow as an industry, it's breaking generational curses. Yes. So they might not have gone on to their own businesses, but it is breaking, and you mentioned this a couple of times, it is breaking the cycle of gang violence and or recidivism. And so that in itself is a success story. I think the question becomes a curious one, just as Makerspark tries to inspire and create other leaders, just out of curiosity, as far as some who have gone on to do their business. But there's numerous success stories. Matter of fact, oddly enough, just a few weeks ago, one of the young men I worked with, the YMCA, he was talking about his work with Homeboy Industries as well. So I see the success stories even now. And so I find them, even though they might not have created their own businesses, they're creating new lives and new pathways.
Yeah, absolutely. So nearly all are doing that, for sure.
Absolutely. Tom, what makes you laugh?
Oh, what makes me laugh? I don't know. What makes me good humor, self-deprecating humor, kidding people. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny you asked about that question. I'm still a recovering CEO, corporate executive.
Well,
In that, like,
I
why I say
haven't
that
heard
because
that one. A
right,
recovering CEO.
right. Because in the corporate world, well, there may be humor, right? You have a meeting with your staff. Yeah, there may be like some humor at the beginning. I show up a Homeboy, and there's so much happiness and laughter. I mean, it's at a gut level. It's not snarky humor. It's not sarcastic humor. It's sort of poking fun at each other and laughing at each other, and belly laughs, and there's tears for sure.
Yes.
And so that's why I said so. So I'm walking, early on, I'm walking through. I'm like hearing this laughter. I'm thinking these people aren't taking this seriously. I'm thinking to myself, come on, get to work, be more serious about things. But no, I mean that's the method that the Homeboy ways that allow people to find positive relationships, find happiness, find joy through others, and then people sort of blossom and grow and become resilient. And that's what we're about.
I appreciate that so much. I'm actually a curious question. I'm not sure if you might know how to answer this one. In the businesses that you've run and created before, compared to your work as a CEO with Homeboy Industries, and this can touch on that spirituality a little bit, but what have you found more rewarding? Has it been your work as a CEO with Homeboy Industries, or is it in knowing that you as Tom have created these incredible other businesses as well, and seeing the hard work you put into those? Or maybe they're even equal. What has been your most enjoyable journey? Piece of your work, creating those businesses?
No, listen. So it's obviously Homeboy, but that doesn't take anything away from my for-profit time. I mean,
For sure.
We had a terrific team. We took care of people. We grew the business. We were very successful. I would think, though, what do I want to say? So I learned so much of Homeboy. I learned not just my own spiritual path, but really it's about joy and finding joy through others. And I wish I had known that in my for-profit days. I think I would have been even a better executive and leader, and probably would have had more. But you can still work hard and still be type A and win in the marketplace. Do all that, but also find some joy with people as well. You just can't be defined by that one scorecard. You got to have sort of other parts of your life. And so, look, I think I've given a lot to Homeboy, but and it sounds so much like cliche. I've gotten so much out of it. I mean, just being part of people's transitions and my own spiritual growth and my deeper understanding of God. It's been a glorious 12 years.
I got to say, I so embrace and enjoy how you mentioned the spiritual aspect of that, because it has been a part of my own entrepreneurship and or my work with young people. And in the CEOs we've been interviewing, that has been a real big awakening, I think, in what I've seen as far as CEOs, where there is this dedication to creating a spiritual, loving environment in the businesses that they're running. And I just enjoyed that you say that. I am curious also, what's the piece of advice you would say to an up-and-coming entrepreneur or CEO who wants to create a Homeboy-like business, or who's just interested in a for-profit business? What is the best piece of advice you've heard that you'd like to pass along?
Oh boy, there's lots of advice. So let me take it a couple of ways. One, if you want to do nonprofit, if you want to do social enterprise, right? I say this all the time. People come visit, and we have, first of all, anybody's listening, come visit us at Homeboy. We have lots of tours, and we willingly share what we're about. But if you're going to do a nonprofit social enterprise, make sure you have somebody who has run that type of business in a for-profit way before you decide to make it a nonprofit, right? And,
good point.
Because you got to know the dynamics and the levers of that business model. For the for-profit, and stay in the for-profit realm, again, I sound so sort of naive or idealistic on this, but it's not. I mean it to my fibers. You can be successful in the for-profit world. You can make a lot of money in the for-profit world. Just make sure you bring your team and your employees along with it. You'll still make a lot of money, right? But you don't have to make the most amount of money. You can still make a lot of money and have the team kind of, in business speak, win together be a part of it together. Like what I'm talking about, how to help people, it's not going to be more than 50 to 150 basis points on your profit margin, right? And so come on, you can do it. It's not just, unfortunately, the way the capital markets are set up is, you got to have the most maximal profit out there. But I've seen this. I've seen family-run businesses along the way. Back in my for-profit days, we require them. They had a long-term, multi-generational perspective, and they weren't always taking the most amount of profit. They left some for the employees. They want the employees to grow with them as well. I've learned this in the nonprofit space, that you can be that great business person, compete in the marketplace, but you can also emotionally investing in your employees is the right thing to do.
What is the secret to creating wealth? Or building a successful business? What's you feel is the secret to it? I've heard discipline. I've heard vision boards. I've heard a number of different those things. In Tom's perspective, what would you say?
It's interesting you asked that question, because at Homeboy, we're trying to add more businesses, right? And because one of my goals is to create more Homeboy-owned businesses so we can create more jobs for our people.
Absolutely.
And so, look, Homeboy is great. I mean, we're about helping people heal from their trauma, right? And we do that. It's always frustrated me that when they get a job outside of Homeboy, it's only been a minimum wage job. Because I see our workforce within our businesses, they're really good managers and leaders, and they run $2 million, $3 million businesses at Homeboy. So if I can create more of those and create more middle management jobs, market-based middle management jobs in a therapeutic way, I think that's going to be great for our team. So I've been trying to do more businesses. So why I say that's because what are the type of business we're going into? Almost the same way of asking the question, what creates a profitable business, right?
Right.
Because everybody wants a profitable business.
Right. Yeah, they do. So when everyone doesn't know the secret and or have the opportunity to speak to a successful CEO like yourself, but they do. I know I want my business to grow even more, but
right. So it's all that you need. I mean, you got to have really a great understanding of the financial numbers, right? You can make so many easy mistakes that impact the business if you don't have a good handle on the finances. You have to be entrepreneurial, but you need a good workforce. So you got to know how much money you can spend on your workforce, how much money you can spend on your product, and where the services are. So just last month here in Pasadena, we opened up our newest Homeboy social enterprise, Homeboy Puppy Fades, where we're doing dog grooming.
Oh, wow.
Right. And so we got there because for a number of years, I wanted to open up Homeboy barbershops, right? Because so many of our guys learned to cut hair in prison. But the state of California, it's nutty. To get a barber's license in the state of California, it's so difficult. You have to go to a trade school for 2 years and put all these hours in. Like, if you're poor, have no income coming, how are you going to go spend 2 years in a trade school? It doesn't match.
Yeah.
So someone came along and said, well, there's this, dog grooming. So we have them certified. Listen, these are good jobs. We're paying $20 an hour plus tips. And our guys, our men and women, they love, they're dog lovers. They love grooming dogs. And it's from this Homeboy brand of kinship and compassion in the pet space. And so what's going to make that profitable? Employees who are dedicated and do a good job, understanding the pricing in the marketplace, understanding what we can afford to do. I mean, it's all the finances and then the good everyday management of it. So again, I didn't give you a magic bullet answer what makes for a profitable business. It's each one of the aspects of customer service, products, finances.
Customer service. So customer service, products, and finances. So the secret that I was understanding, the beginning secret that you would say is having a really good grasp on finances.
Yes. Without a doubt.
Now, that doesn't mean being a math genius, does it?
Nope, it does not. No. And listen, and I put it in the realm of our population we serve, right? I mean, a lot of these folks, they're hustlers. They've been out on the street. They know how to make money, right? So they understand that concept of cash in, cash out, and our folks totally are good at those type of finances, right? And so we sort of apply that to now a more structured approach, and they get it, and they know what makes their business successful, and they can pull it off.
So discipline with financial management.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could say,
But if you don't have a product, if you don't have a good product or service, it doesn't matter how disciplined you are. No one wants to buy your product.
no, so that would be another inside piece of advice. How do you know you have a good product to sell?
Yeah, well, you test market it and you see. I mean, starting up from scratch is pretty hard. But if you look at the competition, you look at other businesses out there. Like we have another Homeboy invested business, Tipito Coffee. That's also in Pasadena. And that two guys graduated from our program, wanted to open up a coffee shop, right? And their market niche is taking beans out of Mexico, so it has a whole Mexican theme to it. And they've done really well. And so one would say, well, there's enough coffee out there. Why do you need another coffee shop? But this is sort of culturally sort of fits into their lane, and it's great coffee. A lot of people are showing up, and they got a little bit. Their operations were a little inefficient, and their financial resources were in place. So then they teamed back up with Homeboy. Now we're a minority investor. So we helped on the finances, and we helped on the operational. So now it's a super successful operation, right? They had the entrepreneurial spirit. We came in with the back end structure.
So as Homeboys expanding into the pet spaces, expanding into the coffee spaces, other spaces that Homeboy Industries is looking into?
Yeah, again, the theme of what you hear me talking about is businesses that need employment, right? Need people working, right? And so we're looking at the automotive repair space. Mm-hmm. And I've wanted to do this for a long time because so many of our folks end up buying used cars. Because some of our folks, they can't ride public transportation because it goes through rival gang neighborhoods and it's dangerous for them. Wow. So then they buy used cars, which used cars have a tendency to break down. Mm-hmm. And so we give out a lot of money to help them fix their cars. Not sure if they're getting taken advantage of by the mechanics. So we're figuring if we can have our own shop, yeah, we can kind of manage that a little bit better as well. So that's the business. We're also trying to recycle electronics. We're thinking about recycling apparel and see if we can make an impact there. So a bunch of different things we're working on.
Expanding into. Well, I got to tell you, Tom, I know your time is extremely valuable. I thank you so much for spending the time with us today. What I'd like to do, if you don't mind, is invite you back and talk about the business model of creating a business and just from the grounds up. So we'd love to have you back. And in addition to that, I want to thank you for the work you're doing from the ground floor with Homeboy Industries. I tell you a quick story myself. So way back in the day, before we saw Homeboy in the supermarkets, and we used to go to the farm fresh markets or farmers markets and so forth. And I remember the first time, because we had done the fundraiser with Homeboy some years before, but the first time I went into Ralph's and saw Homeboy Industries, the tortilla chips. Yeah. And it was so many years ago. And I remember thinking, this is incredible, because I remember how it started, and to see it in the store, there was a sense of pride, because I remember some of the guys from the hood when we were having the club days talking about where it was going to go next, and seeing it go from the farmers markets into the supermarkets was such an incredible blessing for me, just to be able to see that journey to this day. And so we thank you so much on behalf of taking it and creating such a flourishing business model, and what you're doing for helping to heal people, because I think that's the larger portion I'd like people to take away from here today. We truly thank you for spending your time with us today, Tom.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. Tom Vozzo, CEO of Homeboy Industries. We've often said, and I've said myself, the revolution that we want is the love-olution, and Homeboy Industries couldn't do any better demonstration of what the love-olution is creating opportunities for people to heal and transform their lives. So on behalf of the love-olution that is to come, Revolution of Love, we thank you, Tom, and Homeboy Industries, and we're looking forward to seeing you back here with us again. I'll be talking to you about the scheduling about creating businesses from the ground up and some of those ins and outs. Tom Vozzo, Home Industries, Makersport, thanks you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you.
You all, peace, good love. We see you next time with Makersport. Take good care.